Hello, and welcome to our channel, MarshStream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of MarshStream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
I am good. How are you doing?
Great, thanks for having me.
Well, my pleasure. You must be very busy getting ready for this weekend. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Very full days.
I forgot to read your bio. I missed it. It was below the line, but I'll read it now. All right, I'll read it to you.
Ah.
Mark McGoldrick is an assistant public defender for Alameda County. He has defended poor people, mostly of color, in the criminal courts for over 25 years. In the early 1980s, long ago, as a barely in control teenager, he broke many bones, including his neck, and has navigated the world as a paralyzed person since. The journey has taken him from juvenile delinquency to Harvard Law School. Now that's quite a jump. And on to representing people charged with those same offenses of his earlier days. Wow, what a bio, Mark.
Okay.
And it doesn't mention that in between all those court cases and your incredible work as an Oakland, Alameda County public defender, that you also have been a solo performer. How long has it been since you performed your first performance?
I would say it was the late 90s when I started cobbling together short spoken word pieces and inviting people to gather to watch them. And then from there, early performances at the Marsh. Early 2000s, I think I was putting some things on the stage at the Marsh. And then my first full-length show was 2005. So spent some time, kind of intermittently, depending on how life would allow me that luxury of time.
And I think there were moments like you did a bunch of stuff at the Marsh and then there was a lull. And I think that was because you had children. Is that correct?
Yeah, I got married. Now we have 2 children. And that, as everyone knows, change of focus, change of energy, obligations, responsibilities. It asks a lot. Like right now, I'm only back here because Mia, my wife, is inside with the kids. So it asks a lot of a partner to let someone carve away the kind of time it takes to put on shows. So it's a luxury, but there was a gap because of that.
I think it wasn't enough for you to have 2 children. How old are they?
One's 5 3/4, and the other one's a brand new 9.
And didn't you get another addition to your family recently?
A COVID dog. We got a puppy. And she's a great dog. And now she's a teenager and she's tearing hell. So, yeah, but she's fantastic. But as folks know, she's a pretty good sized dog, and it takes time, discipline, training. And again, it falls on my wife because I'm working. I'm working full time, and life's busy. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your show. Now,
Sure.
I think, it all started because you were, the MarshStream part, not all of it, not whatever. I
Right.
asked if you were interested in coming on my show, an interview show. When was that?
That was I remember it was the 3rd of December, I think. And I think it was apropos of something I'd never heard of before, which is like International Disability Day or something. And so in keeping with that theme, you asked me if I would do something disability related. and I picked up some material that I hadn't looked at in years and dusted it off. And that was really fun. And we got some positive responses. And I realized that looking back at that material, I realized the editor, the critic in me thought, oh, there was more to do with that material. A different take on not just the craft and the writing and the stories, but my whole beliefs and orientation and what, a few years going by informs how I feel about some of the material. So I thought it would be fun to pick it up and work with it some more. And it has been.
And I was so excited because when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is great. This is great. And we were talking about different ways to do it. And I don't know about you all, everybody out there watching this, but I'm not really a series watching person, or I wasn't until COVID, but now I watch series. I'm a Netflixer and I watch things on Amazon Prime, and I'm totally into these series. And I very much, especially like series that have gone for 5 seasons that I can watch every night. But we started talking about how this show, which originally at the Marsh, it was right around an hour. Is that correct? What year was that?
It was longer than that. It ran long for a solo show because the first act was pushing up to an hour. Then there was an intermission, and then the second act was maybe 30, 35 minutes. It was kind of a long haul. Yeah.
And so instead of doing it in one, we've decided to split it up into our first Marshflix series, right? Into
Yeah.
parts. You want to talk a little bit about that and what it's like?
Well, I think that it works really well in the series format. When we started thinking about that, an idea that you had and I agreed with was that people are kind of sick of Zoom, right? So you have to make it different and interesting, and how to make it not what they just had to slog through as remote schooling or their jobs, whatever. So how to make it shorter chunks that can be energized, kind of do the performance and have a little conversation all within an hour over time. And that way also people could miss an episode and then watch a recording of it if they wanted to. They wouldn't have to all be there for one committed event. They could dip in and dip out. So I think that's a positive. It's required really changing my conceptual makeup of what the piece is and its component pieces and how it fits together. So that's just been kind of an interesting art problem, intellectual problem, but that's been fun.
And how has it changed it, or how you're thinking?
Well, a couple ways. It's so instead of having 2 acts, I mean, when you're doing these things and you're creating them for stage, it's like, okay, 2 acts. What's the length of the first act compared to the second act? This one, I'm looking to see if it could fall into 4 natural portions, quarters, and it did really, really well. So now we have the show is in these 4 quarters, and each of them work really well as a standalone piece because they're thematically different. The setting is different. What's going on is very different in each. So I think that's been very successful. I think it's a neat project. Yeah.
So glad we worked it out. So you would do one a month. You're doing the first weekend of May, June, July, and August.
Yes.
So that you have a month in between to develop the show.
That's right.
And I'm assuming you've started a little bit already developing part 2, right?
Yeah. I mean, I went through the whole material and I didn't really want to get it scheduled until I had a sense of all 4 parts. So all four parts are there, but in prepping this first part that's going to be tomorrow, boom, the learning curve has been really something, because it's not just condensing it or having it or coordinating it and all these other things, but taking what is a stage piece of art and transforming it to the Zoom. And it's a film medium as opposed to a stage. So that changes so much about pacing, volume. There's no audience out there that I have to deal with in 180 degrees. It's whereas the folks on the other end of the camera. It's all these things I've never really thought about. It's much more of I'm learning about, the film kind of qualities to it, which I'd never really thought much about. So it's been also just transforming it to a new medium. That's been really interesting. But yeah, so all four parts are sketched out, but in putting on this first one, I'm learning a lot so that for the next one, I know there's going to be radical changes to make it fit the medium, and then on and on.
And who are you working with people on it?
Absolutely. My theater road dogs, Club Solo, the little informal theater group, and that's generally comprised of Ron Jones and Wayne Harris, Beth McLaughlin, and Bruce Packman. Right now, we're the main ones, and we're led by our fearless leader, David Ford. And so it's been also really fun to work with those people again. They're so creative and smart and compassionate. So we have fun. We meet. And David Ford, I've been working with lately. He's, as ever, invaluable and brilliant.
And he's working on how you work the camera, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, that stuff too. There's all this. There's all these pieces that I just never had to sort out. The camera, lighting, just all this stuff that comes with doing stuff, in your back bedroom. It's a new. COVID has brought us much.
The good and the bad of COVID.
Good and the bad, babe.
So let's talk a little bit about you. You're a public defender.
I am.
So how they have impacted each other? How have these two? Let's talk first about the performative part of both careers. How is there symbiosis? What's the differences? What have you learned?
Yeah, there's great symbiosis. Doing courtroom work, we are working in the public. We are in open courtrooms. Anyone can walk in. Not before COVID times. These are open courtrooms and people can wander in off the street if they want to. So you are doing your job in front of an audience, and often it's a very hostile audience, depending on if it's victims' families and they don't like what you're saying or whatever. So you might have an audience behind you or to the side of you that's not really happy that you're there and doing what you're doing. You have a party opponent and the other attorney who midstream in your argument, they're objecting and the judge is shutting you down. So you have an audience. It's performative, but it's very different. But it's oral advocacy. It's on your feet. And I found that taking things like theater improv, speech, stuff where, like in improv, where you have these grown adults and you're pretending a snake is a stick is a snake, and you're doing all this silly like children stuff, but it would just strip you of get you out of your head and get you more loose in your body and be more willing to look foolish and take chances and be silly. And that was good to do that, to then go in the courtroom and just feel a little bit more free. And some of the theater skills, chops, um, it gave me more range in the courtroom, just with volume, range of emotion, physical movement, owning the space, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's very complementary to the very different but also performative qualities of courtroom work. And the courtroom work has really also informed my writing sensibilities and my theater sensibilities, with things like the driving plot, don't waste words, stories, push action, and the efficiency, economy, and just the mindset of a public defender, because we're constantly analyzing these fact patterns. You have to be very quick on the uptake with seeing patterns and where things can lead and causation. And they've been very complimentary for me. Yeah.
There must be a difference in the stakes between getting on stage and performing and having someone's life in your hands when you're defending.
Absolutely. The stakes are very different when you're telling stories on stage than arguing a case in court, obviously. The main difference, well, there's a bunch of differences, but one is whenever I'm in the court, I have someone who did not choose to be my client sitting next to me. If I don't do a good job, or if I piss off people when I shouldn't, when it doesn't serve my client suffers. Sometimes conceptually, to me, it's like the carnival at school, where the principal's in the dunk tank and you buy some balls to try to knock him into the dunk tank, whatever. I have some client who's perched over some bad place that you don't want to fall into, and then I have this awesome obligation to that person. And if I don't make the right arguments, if my arguments don't carry the day, bad things happen to this person. So there's real life stake. But at the same time, I didn't choose what happened. I inherit some body of facts, some bad allegation that happened someplace that I wasn't there, and I didn't do it. So you inherit these certain facts that are immutable. If it's a case about a shooting, February 5th, that's what the story is going to be about. I can't make it a stabbing in October. That's not what the case is about. If my client confessed, I can talk about it. I can emphasize certain things, but you inherit a world of facts that you're trying to present in the most favorable light. So in that way, you're a little bit absolved if you have kind of a crappy story to sell, because sometimes some cases are just crappy, right? You can do less with them. The theater stuff, the stakes are so low, right? I mean, the stakes here are like my ego. If I wasted y'all's night, if you guys are pissed off that you're not watching reruns on TV instead of joining us here. So the stakes are really kind of low, except for, my feelings get hurt because I did a crappy job or something like that. But no one goes to prison, So you can just kind of horse around. But a difference for this kind of thing also, though, is I'm choosing to be here presenting whatever I present. And if it doesn't work, if the stories aren't good, it's all on me. I didn't inherit some case that showed up in my box and I got to defend it regardless of its strength. I am saying, okay, this story is interesting. It's ready to be shared. And so if I'm wrong, it's all on me. So it's all on me, but the stakes are no one's going to prison tonight. Not based on this Zoom, I hope, you know.
People rise up.
Yeah.
Mayhem happens watching this Zoom.
Yep. So they're very different that way. The theater does have its stakes. And here's something I love about both media. What I really like about the solo performance is you're naked out there on the stage. You're not like part of a chorus line. You're not the third tree in the children's play and you have a forest in front of you. It's just you out there on the stage, and you rise or die on your own. And I like that challenge. I like the kind of dare to it. And that's also what we do in the courtroom. There can be no more alone feeling than standing in the well of a court by yourself, arguing for someone's liberty. Or I'm sure the other side feels the same way when they're arguing whatever, the interest of the state that they're trying to uphold. But when you're out there just naked in the middle of the court, and you might have some really hostile audience of jurors with their arms crossed, and you're selling your story, that's an awesome challenge too, to try to have your version of events carry the day or entertain. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, is it a little bit more like Zoom in the courtroom? Because it's not
Well,
for
no.
audience. It's for.
Well, during COVID time, there's been that kind of quality, but normally it's all very analog. It's old wooden chairs, and there's the jury, and you could step forward and tussle their hair. It's very, and that's something that we miss right now during COVID time, the face-to-face. When you're talking to a witness or trying to negotiate a case, just sharing space with someone, looking them in the eye and communicating.
Yeah. When you do a solo performance, I don't know, tell us, the story you tell, is it for yourself? Is it that you want to get it out there? Is there something where it's almost like my life story might help somebody else's, right? Oh, by hearing.
That sounds like a PSA.
Well, when you see a solo performer, it opens your mind to other people's stories.
Sure.
You don't have to directly be trying to educate, but you're opening people's minds to the voices of different people. And whereas when you're in the courtroom, you kind of come after the fact. The deed is done of your clients.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a bit of an asymmetrical comparison. I think with the court stuff, the deed is done, but your present advocacy can shape where a case goes and how it's received. But to your earlier point, what's the motivation? Well, I think human beings love to create. We are a creative mammal, from drawing on cave walls to telling stories around the campfire so for me, I like creative pursuits. And there's also the quality of sharing what might be remarkable occurrences or what happened to someone else, or when I tell stories for this kind of thing, I do it more because of the compelling quality of the story, but not for any end in particular. I don't really like to do it with the idea of, and because of this story, they're going to vote yes on Proposition 32, or, you know, it's not like that. It's more like telling stories that are about life and are trying to be as accurate and truthful as possible, because therein lies great drama. And it's this great drama that we're all living together as we, you know, founder through this life as best we do. So there's no real big agenda beyond that. My show, The Golden Hammer, I just thought there were some compelling things that would work well together. For this one, that's largely autobiographical, about the time just before, in the next maybe year after I broke my neck. There were so many extraordinary events, as I remember them, that I thought it was worth sharing them. And it's obviously not just my story, it's my family, the amazing rallying that people around me did, my friends, you know, my good friend who in the play is Stevie. So it was an extraordinary time. And so when I look back on that with the passage of time, I bring to it perhaps a certain amount of objectivity. But I think there were just some extraordinary events, and they're worth telling. Now, if someone, you know, let's say there's some youngster out there who got their back broke recently, sure. I learned so much from hanging around with, you know, retreads who had lived as a person with a disability. You know, you learn from each other. You learn what's possible, and you learn to avoid the mistakes of others. So sure, someone could say that's helpful, but that's not like the motivating. That's not the motivating.
Well, speaking of that, I know you're going to do a couple of excerpts tonight. And the first excerpt you're going to do is from part 1, correct? You want to set this up, and are you ready to do it?
Sure. Then the first, I'm going to do a slightly longer excerpt from part 1, in part because that's what I've been working on. And then I'll do a shorter one from part 2. The one from part 1 is someone who's like my character, is just fucking up, and just is kind of midstream in his hard-headedness and not listening. At this point in the action, he has casts on both of his hands from recently breaking his hands, and so that's where this portion starts. You want me to do this, and then we'll set up the next one afterwards?
Absolutely. Let's do it that way.
Okay. Stevie throws a keg party when his parents are away. From the back wall, you can do gainer flips into the deep end of the swimming pool. If you want to jump higher, you can leap from the neighbor's chimney. It's problematic. From the chimney, you got to really jump, not to hit the cool deck. And from the chimney, you can only reach the shallow end. You can do a coffin drop, feet first but flat, bam! Sometimes you smash your back off the bottom. Or you can dive. With a swan dive, you can almost stall in the air. Then upon entry, you got to explode upward so as not to crash into the bottom. At the party, we drink. I wrap my casts in saran wrap. Somehow I scale the wall with my casted hands. I'm on top of the chimney. People below saying, don't do it. Don't do it. So I do it. Bam! Oh! Fuck! I smashed my hip on the bottom. Ooh. I must hit the entry wrong. Climb out. Do it again. Bam! Oh! Ah, hip pointer. Same spot. Dude, it's not the entry. The cast take me down just that much. I go mountain climbing, fall hard on the casts, climb out windows with them, jogging them, use them as clubs. Within a month, the casts are battered and they stink. People notice me pass by. We don't want you going out tonight. I have plans. Did you hear him? We don't want you going out. Yes, I heard him. I have plans. My parents are in the front entryway. Excuse me. Excuse me. I have to go. I step sideways between them. There's contact, not a push. Not a push. At the party, I roll around with the girl in the bed of a pickup truck. I rub over her jeans with a smelly cast. See you in school? I stumble on the rocks. Where Daniel finds me, passed out over a boulder. Dude, you're so fucking lucky those are white. I was fucking leaving. I didn't know where you were. And then the headlights, I see the cast on the mountain. Hey, hold those stanky things out the fucking window, man. I'm broke. And they stink. When the casts come off, I go back to work at the Four Peaks dining room, where I lose my job. Michael Bloom fails to acknowledge I am head busboy. When I hit him, I don't know that in a few months Michael will die. Street racing his dirt bike on city streets. I re-break my hand.
Wow, Mark, that's a little scene. And I don't know if I remember this scene, but it seems like you're developing. Your craft is booming forward here.
Thanks.
So
I was also a terrible babysitter.
you were you
I mean,
babysit.
would you want that guy minding your kids when you're out for the night? No.
Oh, I don't think so.
No.
Did they actually hire you to do it?
I mean, I babysat for years. Very badly.
What would you do when you were babysitting? Would you actually watch the kids? Or would you, what bad things did you do at those people's houses?
Uh, find their penthouses, their liquor cabinet, they had any weed, you know. What one does.
I have to tell you, Mark McGoldrick, when I was a babysitter, I didn't do those things.
Yeah.
Of course, I refused to do it after about 6 times. I said I would never do it again, but maybe I would have been doing it longer if I was up to that kind of
Yeah.
no good kid behavior.
Yeah.
Well, that is great. And this is part of what we will be seeing on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's just a chunk taken from the midway point or so in Act 1. Yeah.
So, what are you finding? So you're this is part 1 and we're going to do a short segment from part 2 as well, correct?
Yes.
Um and what are the kinds of differentiations have you found after as you're developing this, as you're evolving this form uh in part 1?
Um, sorry, I didn't quite follow.
Wasn't clear, Mark? You saying it wasn't clear?
Sorry.
That's okay. That's
The
okay.
question was great. I'm just the one that's not clear.
I don't know. What do you know? I'm saying and you mentioned this before that you're going to make some changes in part 2 because of what you learned while you're
Oh,
developing.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So my question was, what kind of developments have you already been imagining, or?
Right. Well, we're trying to make it, like I said earlier, a much more dynamic experience than, one head planted in the middle of a screen, like we have it, Zoom meetings. So it's also interesting because this is incredibly low tech. Also, I'm using a solo camera. It's there's not lighting changes. It's in a back room at my house, so there's not high tech. So I really like the low tech angle to it too. Almost like a acoustic session or something. But seeing how to push storytelling into that medium, how to use the frame, how to come in and out. Um, so if you're punching someone, is that an interesting look? That kind of stuff. So it's a translation.
Mhm.
Also, doing theater stuff, you would speak to the back of the house. Here there's a microphone. So that's also different. It's just a very different way.
So, what is the difference for you as a person in a wheelchair between being on Zoom and being on a live stage?
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the challenges that I like about solo performance, not only are you out there kind of to live or die by yourself on the stage, but since I use a wheelchair, that's not a normal look for an audience. That's not a look that they've probably seen a whole lot. And because I use a wheelchair, I move differently through space, and I'm obviously not going to do like big jumping high leg kicks. And there's certain gestures that are simply not available to me. There's other ones that I do that an ambulatory person doesn't do. So I like the fact that I'm challenging an audience to stay with me because whatever I'm performing is compelling. And part of that package is I use a wheelchair. Disabilities are normal. They're out there, and there's a range of expression that goes with that. On the Zoom, I don't think you're going to see my wheelchair in this show, just because of the where the camera grabs and gets. So is that it's different because it's not there. It's implicit in some of the ways I move. I move that way because I'm paralyzed, even if you don't see the wheelchair. Um, I guess that for a lot of people with disabilities, though, something like Zoom enhances their life because they might have mobility issues where it's hard to go out. And, technology can make it so that from their home or wherever, they can be out there to the world that otherwise might be hard. So it is a device that increases access, but I also just miss the physicality of being out there, just me with the audience right there.
Well, let's take a little break here. I want to say that, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to our tip jar. That would be wonderful. But also, if any of you have some questions for Mark about his performance or anything else, if you'd like to put them in the chat room, please do. And maybe right now, maybe do you think you'd like to start to do the second excerpt?
Yeah. So the second excerpt, by this time I've already just completely fucked myself up. So I am now in a hospital, and the kind of fog has cleared from my head injury. And then here's what happens next. We learned the blinking game. Yes, gets one blink. No, gets two. Of my whole body, I can move my eyes. Consonants get one blink. Vowels, two. And breathing through this hole in my throat, no air passage my vocal cords, so I am alert, but mute. My parents catch on quickly. First, ask if it's a consonant. If it is, then ask if it comes before M. Okay. My sister has never been a big reader. Inverts letters, words befuddle, people smart. Consonant? After a really fucking long time, we get to D, R, consonant. Outside, I'm a motionless body, blinking. Inside, what the fuck kind of word is DR consonant? DRINK, drink. I want a fucking drink. D, R. She gets lost. We start over. She starts crying. I feel badly. She starts crying. She starts feeling badly that she can't spell for shit. Eventually, I get a sip. But at least that slender tether has been tossed out. I can communicate. At least with the doctors and nurses, they don't have time for my family.
Wow, Mark. That was pretty funny, part of it. That was really funny. I was laughing out loud with my mute on.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it also, which is it might be kind of a gallows humor, but it also, suits my public defender personality of gallows humor. But in those places, ICUs and rehab hospitals, a lot of funny shit's happening. So the stories that I tell are, in certain ways tragic stories, but also they try to imbue them with some of those wacky things that happen in those places.
So, I mean, it wasn't all funny. I mean, I'm not like a hard-hearted, non-emotional person, but that whole thing of you having to deal with your sister and she doesn't know a consonant. I mean,
Yeah,
you were saying like drive, but it turned out to be drink, right?
sure. Yeah. I mean, but that's what when you're injured, when you're sick, you don't feel well, and others are doing for you, and you're not used to that, and it's frustrating, and all those challenges to self and ego, and what does it mean if you can't do things for yourself? What does it mean to accept help? You know, and what about when you need help, and the care providers are doing a really shitty job? So um, we were all just making it as we make it. It was but I tell you, those times when I was alert but could not communicate, wow. I mean, I was only in a state like that for a short period of time, but I can only imagine the frustration of like post-stroke people who lose the ability to speak and those kind of things. Just the frustration. But I was also just so physically incapacitated. Uh, I was an alert body in a incommunicado. It was pretty extraordinary.
How long did that last for?
I don't know. It lasted from when the fog of my head injury cleared, and we figured out that if I coughed really loud, some air would go past my open trachea tube, and a little word might pop out. But that was a word at a time. So, at a very early age, just the value of a word. I mean, we just toss around words like they're garbage. We're chatting up a storm right now. But just if you could only say a word each day, what would it be? Where would you land the punchline? You know?
Yep, that's a whole different perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we have some comments. I guess probably I shouldn't have said I thought it was funny, but Molly says, not funny to me, heartbreaking. Looking forward to watching the full episode and laughing. Okay, I get it. The sister who doesn't know consonants.
Yeah. Yeah. It's both though, right? I mean, tragedy and comedy, they're so close. So they're both. And the idea is to take an audience on a ride. If it's a flatline story, that's not nearly as interesting as an emotional ride. And the audience can enjoy from the comfort of their homes or wherever, as whoever the performer is taking chances and being in peril, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fun to consume art where the artist is comfortable. We want to see people in stress. We want to see people in peril, and that's where drama comes. Sorry, I'm just
No,
saying shit.
please do say shit. That's a word. Did you ever waste your time spelling out shit in that situation?
I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm sure.
We have Irma says, hold on, I've lost Irma. Irma says, amazing, what a powerful story. It invites us to imagine something few of us can even begin to comprehend. Look forward to seeing this series. And in that, could you, the 4 parts, can you do a little synopsis of the focus of each of the 4 parts?
Yes. So the first part I kind of talked about a bit. It goes from, out of control kid to the big boom accident. Then they kind of just march along chronologically. There's no huge, time warp kind of thing. The second act is the moment of let's say critical care to the months I was in a initial critical care hospital, simply getting put back together enough that I could begin rehabilitation, because I had broken so many different things. It was not just the neck; it was all this other stuff that was broken. So I had to heal enough before I could start rehabbing. Then the third act is starting the rehab hospital, which was a very different animal than the initial kind of critical care hospital. Because then you have all these guys, mostly guys. Few women are, women are smart enough not to do to themselves what these guys do, between gunshots and knives and falling from heights and just the kind of knucklehead lifestyle. So you have all these young guys mostly thrown into this ward together, trying to figure out how to get out of bed, how to take a shower, how to push a wheelchair, how to get a wheelchair in a car. And people have different levels of injury, which greatly impacts things. And so it's the socializing and the psycho socializing part. And then the fourth part, and then, the goal for the rehab hospital is to be a functioning human being who can leave the institution and rejoin the world. Then the fourth part is rejoining the world. And for all I wanted to get out of those institutions, which was very much so, all of a sudden you're home with your family and you're all just trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. And you're not very nice sometimes, right? Sometimes we are so cruel to our loved ones. So there's that. And the fourth part is also kind of more of a buddy piece, because a good friend of mine from the rehab hospital, he also gets out. And for various reasons of personal aptitude and life circumstance and resources, our lives go in very different directions. And so we follow my friend Jim as things happen with our lives. And stuff like that.
Well, it's incredible, especially seeing how well it works on the Zoom. Just the little excerpts, it's incredible. And anybody who wants to see it this weekend, I just want to let you know that you need to register for it on our website. Just go to themarsh.org, go to Solo Performer Spotlight. It's got a picture of Mark on the box, and just click on it.
Sorry.
And then go and register for it. We have a couple of more questions. Yusuf asks, how much of your work do you share with your kids? Do they get to see the show?
I don't think they're going to see the show, mostly because I don't think they're that interested in it. But I share this stuff with them to the extent that they're interested in it. I'm not really afraid of like bad words. We're having an interesting experience because they are being raised with a parent who uses a wheelchair. So they're very, very much being normalized to it. It's their world. And they know that, I had an accident and this and that. I'm not trying to traumatize them, but I think they would rather watch, Grizzly and Lemmings or something. whatever they're into right now.
Is it a challenge to perform without audience feedback?
Yes, yes, because you don't know things like pacing, right? When you have a live audience, if there's humor, you're feeding off of the audience for things like pacing. If it's a cold audience, you're trying to draw them in. If it's a hot audience and they're laughing and responding, you have to slow down so that you're not talking over the laughter or whatever. It's very difficult because, I'm just in my back room alone. I have no idea if y'all are out there, if you like it, if you're changing the channels, what you're doing. So that kind of human connection is, yes, that's very different.
Well, Paul says, what a ride for all of us. We said shit a lot. I am happy Mark has preserved his story and that of our family. That's from Paul. Is that like a brother, Paul?
Huh. Paul is my best brother. He's an amazing person.
Well, Mark, our time is up. This has been wonderful.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to do the project. And if anyone's out there, support your local arts organizations. We need these things during COVID and after.
We sure do. And if you want just a reminder, in the link, there's a link to the tip jar, and there's also a link to register and get your tickets in the chat. You can click on it and do it after. And of course, after the chat, just go to our website, themarsh.org, and you can register for this weekend show. Also, there was an incredible Chronicle article feature if you want to read it. I don't know if it's in the paper yet or if it just came out online. So really interesting article about Mark and the shows by Lily Janiak. So that's Stephanie's MarshStream for this week, and looking forward to the weekend. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you're well and happy for the week, and see ya on Saturday night. All righty. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone who's made this possible tonight. And thank you, audience, for joining us.